Good evening viewers and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host Arshad Waheed. Study of different cultures is a very important subject. It helps us identify similarities and differences between different cultures and societies, their ways of lives, their belief systems and values. And to discuss this subject, we have a very learned guest today, Ali Bhatti Sahab. Ali Bhatti is member of Committee of Comparative Cultures of Asian Study Group Islamabad, and he is also director of Alliance Francaise Islamabad. Welcome to our show, Ali Bhatti Sahab.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very fine. Thank you very much.
I understand that Alliance Francaise is a very important institution in Islamabad, and you particularly are very, I can see you organizing different shows, different cultures, different art exhibitions, photographic exhibition, literary conversations. So I will talk about culture of Pakistan, culture of France, how you got interested into it, and what's the functions of Alliance Francaise, and what's your experience of dealing with different art groups coming from abroad and local groups, and how it helped. You have always galvanized cultural environment of Islamabad.
Thank you very much.
So, before I ask about Alliance Francaise, I would like you to tell about yourself, your studies, and how you went to France, and how you got interested into this kind of activities.
Thank you, Arshad. In fact, I was born in Islamabad here, and I grew up in Islamabad, and all my life I've been to all these public schools in Islamabad, Islamabad College for Boys. And my interest in French started when I was rather young. I was reading The Confessions by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And I don't know why I wanted to read that in French. So that is how my interest in French.
So you wanted to make a social contract, new social contract.
And then in fact, my sister plays a very important role because she studied French and she was a French teacher. So she's my best friend as well. So we were always together. So I started French for two reasons: because to be with my sister, and secondly because of course, Rousseau. So I started learning French, and then in the year 2021, I was part of human rights movement, women's movement of Islamabad, here in Islamabad. I was a member of the executive committee of Bedari. Then I got the chance to sit for an exam, entrance exam into Sciences Po. Sciences Po is, so then I was admitted, and at that time my brother-in-law, who is French, he asked me, Ali, if you had applied for Sciences Po, it's the Institute of Political Studies of Paris. So what happened? I said, I'm accepted. So he said, when are you leaving? I said, I don't know. He said, no, you should go there. It's one of the best schools in France, which was founded in the late in 1880s, and which currently, which is kind of the heart of the French political thought, and it has produced many leaders, world leaders. Boutros Ghali was one of our alumni.
Really?
He's an alumnus.
And he's the Secretary General of UN.
United Nations. And so then I went there for a year or two, but then it happened that I stayed on for longer. And now I have my kids there, whom I love. I love you, Ryan. I love you, Ekwan. And then I was back to Islamabad, and I was asked to take, I was visiting Islamabad, and I was asked by the board of Alliance Francaise d'Islamabad to become the director, take the lead of Alliance Francaise d'Islamabad in 2017. So since then, I've been the director of Alliance Francaise d'Islamabad.
Yeah, I can understand, because before you took over, Alliance Francaise was situated somewhere else, then in Diplomatic Enclave, and then now it's here.
Now it's in F7, yeah.
And it's a hub of lot of activities here in Islamabad.
That's what we try to do, is because our objective is to promote the Francophone culture, first of all the French language, which is a language spoken by more than, I think it's around 320 million people around the world, and it is also the language of the United Nations. and it opens not only job opportunities for many of our Pakistani compatriots, but also it also helps us understand world literature and world culture better. And so, besides that, we also, one of the objectives of Alliance Francaise is to promote Francophone culture. I would specify the Francophone culture and not just the French culture.
Okay.
Because French speaking.
How would you define Francophone culture? I mean, the countries which speak French language?
Yes, and beyond that.
And
beyond because there is the International Organization of La Francophonie, Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, which has 56 permanent members, and in total we have associate members, so 88 member states and governments, which is, I think, the second biggest international organization after the UN, and with the headquarters in Paris. And so these, for example, the current president, Secretary General of the institution of the Organization of Francophonie is from Rwanda. So it's not just French, but also from all the Francophone. For example, we have our partners are also from Maghreb, from the Morocco, for all Maghreb. Morocco, Tunisia is also a member. Algeria, unfortunately, is not a member, but Francophone French is spoken there. So we have all the Northern Africa and other African countries, many African countries, and other European countries. So that culture of understanding different cultures and freedom of expression, these are the key values of Francophonie.
Would you tell us about French language? What are peculiarities of French language?
French language is, first of all, I mean, my love for the language started with, of course, with not just Rousseau, because that's my history part.
You just started by
yeah. But also the language, I think it is a very nuanced language. The beauty of language, if I compare it with English, English is a very precise language.
Okay.
French is a very poetic language.
Really?
I can compare French to Urdu in the sense that I was reading this translation of Faiz Ahmed Faiz. I can't remember the name of the author, and he says about Urdu language, that Urdu language has the strength of Arabic, the poetry of Persian, and the simplicity of rustic Hindi. I'm sorry.
Great.
It is a language that evaporates very easily into poetry. And I would say French is a language which evaporates very easily into prose, but more about all that's around love and sensitive or other senses of our culture. So French language, and I would like to, as we say, because we are in Pakistan and we are speaking in English, I think, I'm pretty sure about that, 75 to 80% of the words in English, Latin words in particular, they come from French. Because in 1066...
70 to 80% in all of it, or just
English.
Just in the Latin words which are...
Latin, primarily Latin, of course, primarily Latin.
Because it's a big
statement. No, because you see, when the Norman, Duke of Normandy, Guillaume the Conqueror, William the Conqueror, when he conquered England in 1066, and he left, so many of the words in the 13th century, there was a language that developed with the mixture of English and French. Firstly, it was French, but it was Anglo-Norman language, and then it was in 13th century influenced by the Parisian French. So that language evolved. That was called the Law French, which is not used. It's an archaic language, but many of these words in law, they're still from that. They come from that period. For example, for example, employee became employee. Many of such words, because of the pronunciation in English, they came from French.
Okay.
So
Ali, what's your experience of working here? I mean, first of all, I would like to ask you the interest of Pakistani people into French language.
Okay, for me, when I left Pakistan for France, my idea was to come back and work more on intercultural understanding of the two. because we being in Pakistan, we are more from the West. We were trained into Anglo-Saxon culture, like my grandfather, and they would go to those places. They would read English literature.
Colonial elites and
Yeah. So when I studied, I thought that for me the better understanding was when I came into contact with the French culture, particularly with my brother-in-law, who's French. So I had a feeling that our culture, our family values, are closer to that of French
how
or
come?
the continental Europe
Mhm.
than because the way we see the family structure here in Pakistan. This family structure I could very easily feel in France.
Really?
The way we have our, I don't know if we can use the word culture mannerisms, the culture, the politeness, and this is very French. And for me, it was very close to my heart.
Don't you think it's almost in every culture being polite? Or most of the cultures at least.
It is, but something that I could really connect to was was French, and especially the language. As we know, the language until recently, I don't know if it's still the case, the language of diplomacy was French. La Poste. I remember once I was young, I was sitting. I had to send a request to a U.S. university for information. At that time, we didn't have this internet and everything, so I had to send a letter with a stamp. And the stamp from Pakistan to U.S. return stamp was in French, because the language of the post was French, because it's the headquarters are situated in Switzerland.
Okay.
So such languages, the French language has played a very important role.
So Ali, it's very interesting, and I think there are a lot of things we have to cover today. But just to make a clear understanding of French culture, would you like to tell what are the basic features of French culture which you think people should know?
I can also, not just when I say culture, I will also talk about my personal experience.
Okay.
Because when I was in France, I really lived the French culture.
Uh-huh. Of course, yes.
Yeah, of course, because I would say rather Parisian culture, which is kind of a melting pot. Because my wife is from the east of France. I mean, originally she's from the east of France, Franche-Comté, an economist. And so when I and my children, we call them, they are half Pakistanis, but they are Parisians. So for me, it's the culture. French culture is more about accepting the other.
Okay.
It's the respect. It's tolerance. I use this word with caution, tolerance. I would rather say acceptance of other cultures.
Okay.
As you would all know, historically, Paris has welcomed all the artists and from different parts of the world.
Mostly exiles.
Yeah, and
Painters, writers.
so that and the aspect of the human rights, since the French Revolution, 1789, the first concept of this, what we call today the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it was the first of the Declaration of Human Rights of
UDHR, you mean?
UDHR. Yeah. So it was after the revolution. It was also in France. It started in France. The Declaration of Human Rights and Citizens at that time. And René Cassin, a French intellectual, has played a very important key role. For some, he's also known as the father, one of the fathers of the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So France has been in the forefront of all the human rights, you would know as much as I do, forefront of these human rights struggles. So these, for me, this becomes the part of culture of France.
You think this human rights culture is some later development, or it was also at the time of colonization and all that?
At the time of colonization, it was, I would differentiate the French colonization in a way that, of course, if we focus primarily on what we call Maghreb,
Yeah.
and that the main colonies were, of course, Algeria and Tunisia. And Morocco. Algeria was a part of France. It was a department of France. France is divided into regions and departments. Algeria was a department of France. It was France. And of course it produced writers like Camus.
Yeah. And many more.
And many more, of course. Because Camus
Actually,
comes...
French interaction with its erstwhile colonies, it has contributed both the cultures. Yeah.
Yes.
And they have also contributed a lot into French culture, especially in your games. Your football heroes are from there.
Mbappe, the greatest of all, of course, Zinedine Zidane.
Yeah.
I mean, but they are French. That is what I want to say. That when you go to France, you are French. First of all, you are a French citizen. You are not identified by your origins or your because in France, you won't be surprised, but it's a fact that France is the country that has the biggest Muslim population in Europe.
Really?
Yeah. So we can't, because in France you are not identified as Muslim or Christian, but you are French.
Okay. Yeah.
And
in most of the democracies,
yes,
it's the same.
Yeah. So so there is a respect for example, for a while I lived when I was in Paris. My home was near the Grand Mosque of Paris, which is one of the most beautiful places to visit in Paris. It was made by the Moroccans, and now it has become a symbol of whenever tourists come from anywhere in the world, they go to the Grand Mosque of Paris. So you see, there has been different religions, different cultures. Although there has been this distinct in buildings, distinct Catholic culture. We see that in France, but that is just a culture.
Okay. And most of these people who came from other regions, they have also contributed into French way of life, their gastronomy, their taste in different dishes. Like many new dishes have been introduced.
Yes,
there.
for example, French, and which is of course are very delicious. French, most famous for around the world. Of course, especially the Anglo-Saxon part is the frog legs. But currently now, you would be surprised to know the most famous dish of France was couscous.
Yeah.
Gastronomy imported from North Africa.
Lebanon or?
Couscous basically, in France it's from
North Africa.
From North Africa. There are different kinds of couscous and tagines, which are now very famous in France. And I will again, for example, there was a time when in France it was 2007, 2nd of January. I remember that day very correctly because that was the day when smoking was banned in all the restaurants in France. And there was these restaurants which were specifically where you would go and you would smoke shisha, which is Moroccan or.
Yeah, shisha.
I think that's what they call. That's what it's called. So they got a cultural exception to operate only because that was part of their culture.
Okay.
So France has not only given a lot to the other cultures, it has also accepted a lot from other cultures.
That's great.
So it has been, for example, I can say today the most prestigious and most respectable Académie Française since the 17th century. One of the members, one of my favorite writers, also is originally from Lebanon.
You mean Amin Malouf?
Amin Malouf. Amin Malouf is a member, and it has Académie Française has 40 members, and when you become a member you become immortal in the sense that you can't. Only one member dies, the new member comes, and their job is to control and to oversee the French language. And this is what a question I have been asked many times as well, because I'm Pakistani and I feel French as well. So that same question was asked to Amin Malouf. Amin Malouf writes in one of his books, I don't know it. I can't. I'm sorry. I don't remember the name exact of this book. I think it was the Roots, Racine, or some else. So he was asked, "What are your roots?" He said, "We are humans. We don't have roots. We have feet, and we move." So he said, "Are you Lebanese or French?" He said, "I am Lebanese and French." He said, "More Lebanese or more French?" He said, "I'm as much Lebanese as French. I can't cut off half of my life and say that I can't." So whatever I have learnt in France, other than what I studied, politics, international language, what I've learnt has developed me personally. This idea of accepting other, and the idea of when I went to France, many of my doctoral research was focused on this part of the world, on Indian, pre-partition Punjab. And here I could see from a different perspective our own, my own roots, I mean, if I could use the word, in this part of the world, Punjab.
Great. I mean, you have talked about Amin Malouf. He's a great writer, of course, and many people in the world like him. We'll come to French literature later on as well.
Okay.
But can we just discuss some other aspects of French cultural scene? For example, cinema. I think they have a great contribution into...
Yeah, for me the biggest, I mean, of course I'm no expert on cinema, but as a cinema cinephile, I love cinema, and so for me one of the most important contributions of France to the world cinema is what we call la nouvelle vague, or the new wave.
New wave, yeah.
In English, like people like filmmakers like François Truffaut, like Godard, Jean-Luc Godard, and they have produced that. They were young between end of 50s to the beginning of toward the end of 60s. For those 10 years, they produced some masterpieces using the new technology, and they have revolutionized the filmmaking, the cinema. So that is their contribution, and of course there are some great names. My personal favorite is of course Philippe Garrel, who is not, I wouldn't call him a mainstream filmmaker, but he brings out more, I would say, social and political issues, works on more. I wouldn't call it parallel cinema, but of course it is that. For example, my favorite film, top of the head, is Les Amants Réguliers by Philippe Garrel. It's a love story set in May 1968. May 1968 being one of the most important events in the history of France, contemporary history of France.
In terms of its student movements?
Student movements, so which completely revolutionized and changed the view French society was. I mean, to a very big extent.
Okay. So that means, I mean, French cinema not only used new technology, but it's also introduced new themes.
Concepts, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great contribution. Another aspect is painting, because even French painters are known for their great skills and understanding and imagination. And most of, and they have contributed into movements like Impressionist movement, Expressionist movements, and other movements also. And they were also a home to many painters like Picasso and others, who found their place in France to work and show their work, their paintings to the world.
You see, we can't. Of course, there were many, but we cannot never overestimate the contribution, Monet's contribution to world art, and
even Van Gogh and other painters, they also were Dutch, but they came to.
But he was written
Paul Cézanne.
César, and so as I was saying, that all those people who could not practice their art elsewhere, they could come. So France has welcomed all of the world. So not only that she has produced her own intellectual production, it has also nurtured many of the international, I mean, worldwide intellectuals and artists in France. So that is what is France today. Okay. And as we say, that there was a bleu, blanc, rouge is the French flag. So bleu, blanc, rouge is blue, white, and red. And after the football match, the World Cup, when we won the World Cup, it became bleu, blanc, bleu. which is a way of saying for the North Africans. So that is an integral part of France. So it became that France is not just France, but it's also the people, and which are
Okay.
of different origins, different nationalities. They come together to make France what
Yeah.
is France today.
Yeah, you're very right. I mean, expression of opinion is one of the fundamental
Yeah.
value of French culture, I guess. And I remember a very, well, as I remember, I can share. And when Sartre was campaigning for the rights of Algerian people, and there were a lot of controversy, and French nationalists were against him, and they demanded de Gaulle to, restrict his speeches and all that. He said that Sartre is France. How can I do that?
Yeah, you see that is a very extremely complicated subject in particular with Algeria,
Yeah.
because I have some old friends. When I say French, I mean Caucasians, white, who call themselves Algerians, because they were born and they were brought up there. I mean, now after Algerian independence, they come, but they still have this idea of France, of their motherland, which was Algeria. I mean, which is Algeria, which was then a department of France. And this movement for this, like you mentioned, Sartre was there's been a very strong movement against their own country
Yeah.
by French intellectuals
Yeah.
for liberation. So like you said that Sartre was Jean-Paul Sartre was a very, I mean, was very influential, and I think, do correct me if I'm wrong, Frantz Fanon was also inspired by
Yes.
Sartre. Was in communication with
Sartre
Sartre.
wrote the preface of his book Wretched of the Earth.
Wretched of the Earth. So you see, Sartre has been a very key role, because Fanon was also part of the FLN, the movement for liberation of Algeria, and so Sartre, it's not, so for them, the human rights of Algerians were as important as the human rights of his own compatriots, from the French, because of course Algerians were French back then. So that way, France is, when we say France, France is not just the France metropolitan, what we used to call that time. Even today, you would be surprised to know that, I mean, France is the country which has the biggest number of time zones in the world. It has 12 time zones. France is not just, it's beyond, way beyond its the Caribbeans, Antilles, I think it says in English. Antilles, and so that's why the France is, it's all of that. It's multicultural and diverse.
Well, you have pointed out very bright aspect of French intellectuals, that they were in favor of liberation of its erstwhile colonies, and they supported them. Even their policies were against the government policies. But I think it's a very complex subject,
Yeah.
and you can find different examples in different literature, in different fiction or poetry as well. There's a different of perspectives as well. Yeah, we may have some examples, but the perspective of the ruling country and the perspective of the people who are being ruled may be different. I was seeing one of the country's national poet is celebrated because it's a European countries, because he wrote the glory of his country, its navy, its ships, because they conquered other lands. On the other hand, the lands which were conquered may have a different story. Like Chinua Achebe, I guess if I'm not wrong, he criticized Joseph Conrad's masterpiece, Heart of Darkness, because he didn't like the way Africans were perceived by the Europeans of that time. Similarly, a French writer, he's my very favorite writer, great writer, Albert Camus. His very famous book, Lost Stranger, The Stranger as we
The
call it,
outsider.
Outsider,
The outsider.
in which the main character, Marsault, I guess. Marceau. I mean,
Yeah.
please correct my French pronunciation. He murders an Arab. In the whole of that novel, that person is addressed as the Arab, just in one liner. Well, my personal opinion is that the novelist was writing something else, so that was not an important aspect. But though the Arabs had a different opinion, so they said how their identity was challenged. So Kamal Daoud, who is also French, Kamel Daoud, yeah, he wrote another novel, Maxwell's Investigation, and he said that the man had a name, Musa, and he was not just an Arab. And the thing is, there were two perspectives. So this is very interesting. I don't want to challenge that what Sachs has contributed into human freedom, but it's not a standard. I mean, there may be different treatment to such
of course
themes as well.
Yeah, because that, you see, let's go back in the history. Let's not see the history from today's perspective. People who were born there, they were Algerians, as I told you, which are now called Pieds Noirs, who came back to France, to Metropolitan, at that time that too was France. So for them, that was their land. So he wrote about, we can see the same, as you said, in the Outsider or L'étranger in French, same as La Peste. La Peste, I think it's translated as the plague.
Yeah.
You don't see any Arabs. Although it was criticizing mostly like the Nazis of that period. So there he himself considered himself to be French and Algerian. So it was not, and of course when you talk about Musa and his brother Kamel Daoud, and I would remind you that Kamel Daoud, it was his first novel, an Algerian writer, and who got the most prestigious award in France, the Prix Goncourt. It won the Prix Goncourt, if I remember correctly, in 2014, a year after it was published in Algeria, and he had some problems in Algeria as well. So, yes. So for Camus, he was just talking about that particular period of time. So let's go back in time at that period that he himself was Algerian and French, and living there, born to French parents in Algeria.
Yeah, I understand. I may still have some differences with you, but I take your point because there are different perspectives. There are always different perspectives, and we should not just validate any one perspective. So we should accept different.
I'll say, for example, J'accuse, the Dreyfus affair.
Yeah.
France was at that time. You see, that at that time France was accused of being, part of France was accused of being anti-Semite. But it was Émile Zola, great French writer, who wrote J'accuse in the Dreyfus to kind of plead for Dreyfus, who was imprisoned.
Well, yeah, I was just saying that I think if I have to explain Camus and his Outsider, so he was writing totally a different theme, and the character is just disconnected from his surroundings. The main character is disconnected from his surroundings. He is not very, I mean, he is going to his mother's funeral, but he looks very much indifferent to that. And in many ways disrespectful as well. And when he was sentenced, it was not because of the crime he has committed, but because he has shown indifference, and which was not liked by the judges, and they had developed some certain kind of bias against that.
That's he starts his book as that at the cemetery when he says that it's not my fault. And here Musa's brother in Camel's, he kills a French as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the name is not coming to my mind. During this liberation, the freedom of Algeria, when he comes in and he finds refuge in Musa's home. He's dead now, Musa Bai. So he kills the French. and he wants to be punished for his crime. But since he undergoes a trial where he's liberated after, I think, 1 year afterwards, because he did not kill the French for liberation,
Yeah.
and he wanted to be punished for the crime that he committed.
Yeah.
So it's
So there's a whole
Yeah.
discussion and debate about crime, punishment, and perspective. Maybe the point I wanted to discuss at this point is that history cannot be rewritten, but to expect from a novelist to say something which is in favor of X, Y, Z is a very complex issue.
Yeah.
Because Camus is writing and explaining a kind of his own existential
Yeah.
views, and in which this aspect is not taking any priority. But an Arab or
Of course.
they look at differently. So that is
That
what
is,
art
of course,
and
that is
literature
different.
is.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to raise a point that there may be different aspects of French culture and other cultures, French politics and its
of course.
colonist politics, and history cannot be rewritten. Nobody can justify anything.
Of course, yeah.
So, but that is done, so done. But of course, there may be some negative things and there are some positive things, as we have just
Yeah.
said that French intellectuals were raising their voice in favor of the oppressed. But coming back to your role in Islamabad, let's come back to very much here. I think, for last couple of years, I've seen a lot of activities French Cultural Center is doing, or Alliance Francaise is doing. It has contributed a lot in cultural life of Islamabad in terms of theatre. I've seen theatre in terms of cinema, in terms of literary conversations, and get together of Pakistani and French and international expats who are living here. So I would like to you, how did you take up this responsibility, and what was your vision to create a cultural exchange between two countries?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, that when I left Pakistan, my idea was to create bridges between these two cultures for France. So when I came back, it was, for me, when they offered me this position, for me it was a dream come true. And I had a certain advantage because normally the director comes from Alliance Francaise, or director of Alliance Francaise comes from France, and he or she is here for 3 to 4 years. And for me personally, I can say that I have two loves. I mean, there's a song as well, J'ai deux amours, mon pays est Paris. So I have two loves, my country, my home. So I have two homes, Paris and Islamabad. So our job, Alliance Francaise, is to promote, as I said, Francophone culture as well as the local culture, and create bridges between the two. So yes, we do. For example, we have recently we held this book launch for one of the greatest writers. I mean, I would say the cartoons, Le Petit Nicolas, the Little Nicholas. It was translated in Urdu. So we launched that, and we have also shown the plays like of the French plays like Molière's École des Femmes. We have translated into Urdu. We have also translated other poems, and of course we have also, it's both ways. We have also been a part of being a part of, though that's not Alliance Francaise job, but we nominate our actors, cultural actors from Pakistan, to go and to work with the French cultural activists and come back to Pakistan and promote, to learn the skills to promote our own culture.
What do you mean by our own culture?
I mean when I say our own culture, when I'm sitting in Pakistan, so I mean our Pakistani culture. Yeah. Pakistani culture. So here I try to, there's another aspect of this, it goes beyond, for me there are three. One is environment. Especially after COP21, environment is a very, we have screened many films and on the environmental disaster that we are living, because Pakistan, as you know, is one of the least producing. I think we are, Pakistan's contribution to the
environmental
waste is point something percent,
Okay.
and Pakistan is among the first 8. For
So
the
what are you
most
doing
8
for
ranges.
that?
So what we do is we try to raise awareness.
Okay, great.
So we have been screening films and having debates around this,
Okay.
around for to sensitize people of this, and of course we have also. I'm also personally been very on the forefront of in Islamabad here at Audience Sponsors. We have organized screenings of like animals, pets, animals
Okay.
shelter, animal shelters, or stray dogs. How to sensitize people about them, and.
You have also helped organizing great theatre as well, like Antigone I once saw.
Yeah, that we organized that as well at Alliance Francaise, which has of course which was a great play whereby with our in collaboration with our partners Theatre Wale group. So I would say Antigone, Jean
Antigone.
Henri's, because that was a French
It's
translation of Antigone.
adaptation of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
classic
the classic, the
tragedy.
French, Jean Henri's Antigone. It was yeah, it was it was played in Urdu,
Yeah.
and we made that part of literature of literature accessible to all the Pakistanis of our level. So
And I also saw heard of a musical program you did
Yes,
from the
yeah.
people from Thar.
yeah, that is
So
also
that's kind of local people.
yes, local from the
uh,
Sindh. From Sindh, we unfortunately because of the that is also a fun of ours. I mean, we take it as a responsibility to, not only to promote culture, but also to help the victims of floods, recent floods. Because for us, for people living outside those areas, the floods came and they went. But for people who were living there, they lost their homes, and to rebuild their homes. So it was two-sided.
Okay.
It was also we tried to help local community from Sindh who have lost everything and promote their culture, which is a dying, unfortunately, that music, Marwari, and also some our other, come on, say, the dying music of, for example, so the concept here was not just Marwari music, but also Sufi. So it was to promote Pakistani culture from other areas other than Lahore, Islamabad, and Karachi.
Wonderful, Ali Bhatti. It's a great job you are doing, and thank you very much for being with us
Thank you.
today.
It was a pleasure. being with you.
talking to
It
you.
was a pleasure.
So, viewers, thank you very much for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.